Welcome to Backbone Unlimited. My name is Matt Hartsky. In this episode, we're diving into the world of elk bow hunting, the up-close, heart-pounding, soul-shaking side of elk hunting that'll teach you more about yourself than any other challenge in the mountains. These are some of the lessons that have cost me elk. Archery elk hunting isn't just a test of gear or strength. It's a test of judgment, patience, restraint, aggression, and precision. And over the last 33 years of chasing bulls with a bow, I've made just about every mistake a guy can make. I've drawn too early, drawn too late, moved when I should have waited when I should have closed the gap. I've had bulls walk into 20 yards and walk out without ever giving me a shot. I've blown stalks. I've rushed setups. I've messed up wind, timing, angles, you name it. I have probably messed it up. But I've also had moments that changed everything. Moments where I learned the difference between almost and success. And today, I want to share 5 of the biggest lessons that would have saved me years of frustration had I learned them sooner. This isn't just another top 5 tips list. These are the hard-won realizations that only show up after enough bulls get away. Enough hikes have turned up empty, and enough should have been stories pile up in your memory. If you're just starting out, or even if you've got a few seasons under your belt, my goal is simple: help you shorten the learning curve, increase your odds, and walk out of the woods knowing you made the most of your season. Let's dive into it. Tip number 1, silence kills, not just the arrow. One of the first lessons I wish I had truly understood, and I mean deep in my bones, is how deadly silence can be in archery elk hunting. Not your bow, not your bugle, not your cow call, your silence. When I started bow hunting elk, I thought success meant that I had to call, I had to make noise, that every situation needed sound to fill the gap, pull a bull in, and set the scene. But over time, and after spooking more elk than I'd like to admit, I learned this: sometimes the quietest hunter kills the biggest bull. Every noise teaches the elk something. Elk live in a world of signals: a snapped twig, a clumsy footstep, a poorly timed cow call. They hear it, they interpret it, and they react. Early on, I didn't fully grasp how much my presence telegraphed long before I even saw an elk. I'd hike in, whispering to a buddy. I'd set up in crunchy undergrowth. I'd bugle too loud, too often, too close. And guess what? I was telling every bull within 400 yards exactly what not to trust. When I started shutting up, I started getting close. There was a turning point in my hunting, one that changed everything. I had slipped into a dark patch of timber before daylight, waiting to hear a bugle. Nothing. Silence. Still air. Thick cover. Instead of calling, I just sat. I listened. I waited. And I moved when the thermals told me to. And right when I was starting to wonder if I was in the wrong place or wasting my time, a bull walked out at 38 yards. Quiet, alone, feeding, no idea I was there. No calls, no interaction, just solid setup, wind discipline, zero noise. I'd done my homework. I was in the right place at the right time through a travel corridor. That encounter lit a fire in me because I realized how many bulls I'd probably never even seen because I was too loud, too busy trying to make elk come to me instead of learning how to go to them. If you'd like a video that I did in depth on hunting transition zones, I'll link to it up here for you. Now, movement is louder than sound, right? And here's the truth that bow hunters eventually learn, often the hard way. It's not always your calls that spook elk, it's your movement. Drawing your bow too early, pivoting your feet on dry, crunchy ground, turning your head too quick, right? Seeing that movement instead of looking with your eyes and slowly turning your head. I learned that one when I was really little hunting predators with my dad. He told me, you know, always try to look with your eyes as much as possible rather than moving your head, because that's just a flag, especially for a lot of us that like to wear a ball cap. Elk don't live in a vacuum. They're not oblivious. And when you're inside 60 yards, your margin for error shrinks to nothing. I've had bulls spook at the whisper of fabric, at the glint of light off my riser, at the shift of my foot on a pine cone. And in fact, I've used certain camos over the years that had a lot of white or lighter tannish colors in them, and I've watched bulls come in and shift my body and saw them peg me instantly. Movement. Once I started eliminating all the small movements, reducing my noise signature, and becoming still as death itself, the encounters changed. Stillness is a weapon. Archery elk hunting is about control. And the most underappreciated form of control is your ability to shut the heck up and let the mountain speak. You hear guys talk about letting it unfold, and that's what they mean. Instead of filling every gap with another call or rushing your stalk because you're losing light, you learn to wait, to breathe, to slow down and become part of the terrain. I've had bulls come into my wind, stand still, spin, circle, grunt, scream, and still die. Not because I was calling them into that or because I moved fast, but because I stayed frozen, silent, lethal, waited to seize the moment. So make silence part of your strategy. Here's what I do now and what I wish I'd done from the start. I build in moments of complete stillness into every hunt. Even if I'm calling, I often shut up to let elk make the next move. I get people commenting on my videos all the time about how great bugling is. I agree. In the right situation, it's freaking awesome. I'm not arguing that point at all. But I also know that it's a right place, right time scenario, right? And there's a right place, right time for silence as well. When I start out early season here in a couple of weeks, I can tell you I'll be spending a lot more time silent than I will be talking, right? And I train for the silence. I shoot from a seated position. I practice drawing slowly. I practice staying still at full draw as I'm getting fatigued. I avoid unnecessary gear that makes noise. Zippers, loud clothing when you listen to it, right? Just like a lot of whitetail hunters pay attention to, just as important in the elk woods. Strapping flaps on vinyl harnesses or a backpack are a big one for me, especially in Wyoming. A lot of times we've got wind to deal with, and those flapping straps, they can bust you. So, no loose clips, creaky fabrics, flapping pack straps, or loud zipper pulls. I listen more than I talk because the elk will tell you everything if you shut up long enough to hear it. The bottom line here is sometimes the best thing you can do with a bow in your hand is nothing. Don't worry about filling every second with movement or sound. Don't call just to feel like you're hunting. Let the silence work for you, because in archery elk hunting, silence doesn't mean activity. It means intention and maturity. And the bulls that walk into your setup without ever knowing you're there, those are oftentimes the ones that hit the dirt. Now, tip number 2, the first bugle isn't always the best one. When I first started bow hunting elk, any bugle was a green light, baby. Didn't matter what it sounded like. Location bugle, challenge bugle, growler, whiny spike, I'd hear it and instantly I'm running for it, right? And I wasn't just moving in, man. I mean, I was committed, tunnel vision, charging through the timber, racing thermals, assuming that bugling bull was the bull. But here's the hard truth. The first bugle you hear isn't always the one you should chase. Sometimes it is, but more often than not, that first bull is either just posturing, already surrounded by cows, or he's a satellite getting shoved around by a bigger, quieter herd bull. Just because you can hear him doesn't mean he's killable. There are bugling bulls, and then there are huntable bulls, and those two aren't always the same. Some of the most vocal bulls I've chased were the hardest to try to kill. They were moving too fast. They were talking from across canyons or out in wide open parks with no approach. Or they had 20 to 30 cows, zero interest in leaving them to come investigate me. That's a hard lesson to learn, especially when adrenaline is pumping, because in that moment, everything inside you is screaming, go. But experience has taught me to pause, listen longer, ask better questions before I move in. There's often a bigger story behind the sound. When I hear a bugle now, I don't just ask, where is he? I ask, what kind of bugle was that? Was it deep and guttural? Was it short and high-pitched? Did it sound nervous or angry? How far away was he? Is he accessible? Is there terrain I can use to get there? What time of day is it? Is he on his feet heading to bed, already in bedding, or up feeding? Is he alone, or is that a satellite pestering a herd? Is there more bugling behind him? Any cows? You'd be amazed how much intel you can gather just by stopping for 5 extra minutes and listening. Chasing the wrong bugle burns time and energy. I can't count how many times I've spent a full day chasing a bugle that was just unkillable. That bull was it just wasn't going to work out. You could call that pessimism, but it didn't work out. So in theory, I proved myself right. There were times I'd cross ridges, burn a ton of calories, bust through the thermals no matter what, only to finally get eyes on a bull standing in the wide open with 15 cows, no cover in any direction, and me dead in the wind. Wasted energy, wasted time chasing for hours, and by then I'd blown the chance to hunt smarter bulls nearby. Passed on other bugles that probably would have led to better situations. This is where discipline separates bow hunters who fill tags from those who just chase sounds. The best elk bow hunters I know aren't just listening for bugles. They're analyzing them. They're choosing their opportunities, not reacting to every noise. Sometimes the quieter bulls are the killable ones. The herd bull, the one pushing cows and controlling terrain, he's not always the loudest. He's the one letting his satellites make the noise. He's staying back, playing the wind, moving with his cows, keeping an eye on things. And you won't necessarily find him if you're sprinting towards the first sound like a fire drill. Many of the bulls I've killed didn't bugle until they were close, or they didn't bugle at all until I cut them off at the right time or worked in close enough to provoke a response. If I had just gone tearing off after the first screamer of the morning, I never would have had the chance on many of the bulls I've killed. Be patient, then be decisive. Here's what I do now and what I wish I'd done years ago. I listen longer than I want to. If I hear a bugle, I try my best to wait. I want to hear it twice, 3 times. I want to know if he's moving, standing, rounding up cows, or just announcing himself. I build a game plan based on what I hear. I ask, can I close the gap without being seen? Where will thermals be in an hour? Where are his likely bedding routes? Where's he headed? A lot of times I'll open up on X to help me answer those questions. I don't assume that the first sound is the best option, because often the second or third bugle you hear is better positioned, more responsive, or more vulnerable. This doesn't mean you sit on your hands all day. It means you slow down enough to make the right move, not just a fast one. Because a bugle is not a command, it's a clue. And if you treat every clue like a slam dunk, you're going to burn a lot of daylight chasing ghosts. So learn to interpret bugles like a language. Speak the language. Look past the volume and into the meaning. Because the elk that wants to die, he's not always the first one to speak. Tip number 3. Stalk with your ears, not just your eyes. One of the biggest shifts in my bow hunting mindset came when I stopped treating my binoculars like my most important tool, the end-all be-all, and started trusting my ears as much as my eyes or more. Now, don't get me wrong, glass is essential for high country mule deer or long-range observation, but when you're inside the elk woods, especially in tight timber, dark canyons, or north-facing pockets with limited visibility, your ears are oftentimes your best asset. Elk make noise. Learn to hear what matters. Elk are big, a lot of times clumsy. I've got lots of videos of bulls running around, bugling, chasing cows and other bulls, and they're tripping all the time. They move through thick country, they grunt, they mew, they bark, and if you train yourself to listen, not just passively hear, but really listen, you'll start to notice things you never picked up on before. I've heard bulls lightly raking their antlers at 150 yards, giving away their exact position in timber so thick I couldn't even see 15 yards. I've heard the soft pfft of a cow exhaling. I've heard hooves crunching brush on a side hill as a herd quietly fed upslope. And I've tried to use every one of those sounds to make a move. Most of my best close range stalks didn't start because I spotted elk. That has rarely happened for me in our country. They started because I heard one. Your ears give you direction, timing, and behavior clues. When you let your ears lead the stalk, you pick up real-time intel that your eyes can't always give you. Things like direction. You'll know if they're feeding away, holding tight, or circling. Cadence. You'll hear how calm or agitated the group is. Density. More noise usually means more animals and more eyes that you have to beat. Priority. A solo raking bull might be more approachable than a herd group, crunching brush. And most importantly, you learn when not to move. Because hearing a bull pause, stop, and look around is your clue to freeze. One step too many during that silence, and the whole game's over. If he's got his head up, you do not want to be moving. So try not to get tunnel vision chasing a shadow. I used to just stalk visually. I'd catch a flash of tan or a hint of antler and get locked in like a dog on a bird. And I'd blow stalk after stalk, chasing movement and forgetting to listen to what was going on around. The problem is you can't outsee an elk in its own terrain. They vanish, they shift. I've seen them just seem to walk behind a tree and I expected them to walk out on the other side. They're gone, disappear. But if you keep listening, you'll stay in the game. A lot of guys get so tunnel vision, they lose awareness of thermals, of shifting winds, of subtle hoof clicks around them. Don't be that guy. Train your ears before the hunt. I didn't always have this skill. It came from repetition, from time in the woods, from consciously training myself to focus on sounds and mentally cataloging what I was hearing. Now, I tend to pick out the difference between a squirrel rustling leaves, quick, erratic, and directional, a bird hopping through branches, light and fluttery, and an elk stepping into deadfall, heavy, deliberate, sometimes rhythmic, much denser sound. This isn't magic, it's just awareness. And you build it by being quiet in the woods, by sitting still in good country and just listening. Hearing can save the hunt. I can't tell you how many times my ears have salvaged a blown opportunity. A few seasons ago, I had snuck into a bull bugling with some cows in the dark. As it began to get light, he moved off up the ridge with his cows before I could get a shot. No amount of bugling or cow calling I did fazed him. He was headed, he was gone. He would just bugle and continue with his cows towards their bedding area. Then he stopped talking altogether. I thought he was gone. So I stopped chasing, sat down, and I listened. About an hour later, I heard him again about 400 yards away, and he kept bugling every few minutes from the same place. I was thinking, bedded. So I quietly crept that way, and before I knew it, I was on his track, which headed down a small trickle of water with quiet grass. But it was so thick I had no visibility, just a narrow path through the bushes. All of a sudden, I saw some yellow color. I ranged. He was at 18 yards. I couldn't see all of him yet, but he was facing away from me. I had no shot. So I kept on creeping up. I kept ranging, kept trying to see if I had the right shot angle. At 11 yards, I drew, but I still didn't have the shot I wanted. It wasn't great. So I snuck 3 more steps at full draw as he continued to rake on this tree, and that was close enough. No calls, just sneaking on his sound. So you've got to learn to trust your ears and move with caution. From that moment forward, I made a promise to myself. When I'm bow hunting elk, I'm moving slowly, I'm walking like there's an elk one step ahead, and I'm letting my ears, not just my anticipation, guide my stalk. Because bow hunting isn't about speed, it's often about timing. And the guy who moves based on what he hears is almost always ahead of the guy who moves only based upon what he sees or hopes to see. You're going to hear more elk than you'll ever see. And if you learn to trust those sounds, read them like signposts, and adjust your approach with discipline, your odds of getting within bow range go way up. Bow hunting elk is close range chess, and your ears, they're the most underrated piece on the board. And tip number 4, calling is a tool, not a crutch or an end-all be-all. There's a point in every bow hunter's journey where calling becomes the center of everything. You watch every video, mimic every sound, carry 6 different reeds, and think if you can just sound like Corey Jacobson or Jason Phelps or Bo Brooks, the elk will come running. I've been there. I used to believe that mastering the call meant mastering elk hunting. And while it's an awesome tool, over time, after a few bulls blew out at the very first noise I made, I realized something important. Calling doesn't necessarily kill elk. Smart calling kills elk. Don't fall in love with the sound of your own cow or elk talk. Early on, I was calling too much. I'd throw out a bugle every 10 minutes hoping to trigger something. I'd use cow calls to keep the mood alive, even though nothing was responding. And I'd get impatient, filling the woods with noise just to feel like I was doing something. What I didn't realize was that I was giving away my location over and over again. Elk are smart. They've been hunted. They've associated calls, especially unnatural, repetitive, too loud calls, with danger. Every noise you make tells the elk something. So if your cadence is off, if your tone sounds unnatural, or if your timing's bad, you're not convincing an elk, you're alerting one. Use calls to create opportunity, not substitute it for skill. Calling should enhance your position, not make up for a bad one. If I've got the wind wrong, or I'm in the wide open, or I'm too far away, a perfect estrus whine or bugle is not gonna fix it. Elk don't just come to calls, they come to credible setups. So now I ask, do I have cover behind me and shooting lanes in front of me? Is my wind consistent and safe? Am I in a place an elk would naturally want to go? Only when those boxes are all checked do I even consider making a sound. Timing matters more than sound quality. Here's a big myth that needs to die. You don't need to be a championship caller to kill elk. It would be awesome. Those guys are amazing. I'm not knocking anybody. I love it. I love watching them. I love listening to them. But you don't have to be that guy. You just need to sound believable, and you need to time it right. I've heard hunters with perfect bugles scare off elk because they were too close, too loud, or completely out of context for the situation. Meanwhile, I've used mediocre cow calls to bring bulls into bow range because the timing just happened to be spot on. Sometimes a soft mew when a bull pauses is all it takes. Sometimes a raking sound and a single grunt at the right moment triggers that charge. It's not about volume, it's not about range, it's about knowing when not to call. Let the elk dictate the tone. Elk are individuals. They've got different moods, temperaments, and thresholds. Some are aggressive and they want to fight. Some are passive and wary. Some are ghosting silently behind their cows and won't say a word. If I treat every encounter the same, I'll blow a lot of them. So now I do this. If a bull is fired up and screaming, I challenge back, only once or twice. If he doesn't close, try a new angle or moving in, not necessarily just more sound. If he's hesitant, I'll back off. I'll move, change my location, go silent, and let curiosity build. If I'm blind calling, I give it 20 to 30 minutes, 1 or 2 cow sounds, a little raking, then silence. That pause is often what makes curious bulls investigate. Don't let calling become a distraction. Here's the truth. Some hunters use calling as a crutch. They're not confident in their movement. They're unsure about wind. They're nervous about stalking close. So they just sit back and call from too far away, hoping the bull will do all the work. But that's not bow hunting elk. That's fishing. You need to be in the elk's world, in his bubble, in his route. And calling should just tip the scales when the moment's right, not be the entire strategy. Calling is just one tool on your belt, so use it wisely, sparingly, and with purpose in the right situations. Because when you rely on calling alone instead of understanding elk behavior, terrain, and timing, you're playing checkers. But when you call with intention and restraint, now you're playing chess. And archery elk hunting is a thinking man's game. Tip number 5, closing the distance is an art form, not a race. If there's one thing that separates successful elk bow hunters from those who keep coming home empty, it's this. They know how to close the gap without getting busted. This sounds simple, but it's one of the hardest things to master in the elk woods. A bull bugling at 300 yards, that's exciting. At 100, it starts to get real. But when he's inside 60, 40, 25, that's when things fall apart for a lot of guys. And it's not because they didn't find elk, it's because they didn't finish the stalk with the same discipline they started it with. Most hunters rush the final 100 yards. You've probably done it. I know I have. You're in tight. You can hear the bull raking, cows mewing, hooves shuffling. Your heart's thumping out of your chest. Your breathing is shallow. You're imagining the shot. And then you take one more step, a branch cracks, a cow snaps her head around, the entire drainage blows up in a thunderstorm of hooves and heartbreak. Game over. Patience at the end is more important than speed at the start. Here's what I've learned. The closer you are to a bull, the slower you need to move. That means no shortcuts. Crawl if you have to. Stay low. Hug the shadows. No assumptions. Just because the wind's good now doesn't mean it'll stay that way. Pay attention to the thermals. No noise. Every step should be deliberate. Toe to heel. Soft terrain only. Avoid dried sticks like the plague. The goal is to enter his world without him ever knowing. Not to charge in like you're running out of daylight. Angles, wind, and cover in that order. If I could give my younger self one formula for getting into archery range without getting busted, it would be this. Angle. Pick a route that leads you towards his likely path or location, not directly at him. Elk don't move in straight lines, and neither should you. Wind. Thermals are everything. In the morning, they're going to be going downhill as the sun hits the slopes. They're going to start to rise. In the evening, they're going to start to drop again. But terrain and sun exposure change everything. Adjust constantly. Carry wind indicators and use them often. Cover. Not just visual. Think in terms of noise. The shot happens fast, so you've got to be ready early. One of the biggest mistakes I made early on was waiting too long to get ready. I'd sneak in tight, finally see antler tips, and then start fumbling with my release or my rangefinder, adjusting my stance, drawing too late, getting picked off as I reached for the string. Now, I treat every setup like it could happen right now. If I'm inside 100 yards, my release is ready to go. Might have my rangefinder in my hand. I've picked shooting lanes, even if I don't see him yet. I've rehearsed my draw in that exact position from that body angle at that elevation, because elk don't pose for you. They don't just stop in the open and wait most of the time. You get a 5-second window or less, or none at all. Sometimes the best move is no move. There are times when the smartest play is to do nothing. Just stay hidden. Let the bull come to you. Let the herd settle. Let the wind stay steady. I've sat motionless for 30 minutes within 50 yards of elk in thick stuff, waiting for the right cow to shift or for a bull to take 2 steps and open a lane. And every second was worth it, because patience kills elk. Rushing kills opportunity. You've got to make sure you're controlling your breath. Control the moment. At full draw, everything tightens. Your brain, your hands, your vision. But if you've closed the distance with discipline, you've already visualized the shot. This is where preparation takes over. Breathe. Pick a spot. Don't guess yardage, know it ahead of time, and execute like you've done it 100 times. Because in that moment, all the planning, scouting, hiking, and hard knocks come down to this one thing. Did you close the gap well enough to finish cleanly? The hardest part of elk bow hunting isn't finding elk. It's finishing the stalk with the same focus and patience that got you within range. Closing the distance isn't luck, it's a learned skill. And once you develop it, your tag odds shift dramatically. The 5 bow hunting lessons I wish I'd learned sooner. Silence kills, not just the arrow. The first bugle isn't always the best one. Stalk with your ears, not just your eyes. Calling is a tool, not a crutch. Closing the distance is an art form, not a race. I didn't learn these lessons from a textbook. I learned them by screwing it up repeatedly, by watching bulls vanish that I should have killed, and by finally piecing together what actually works in real pressured elk country. If this episode helps you avoid even one of the mistakes I made, then it's a win, because the more we respect the animal, the terrain, and the process, the better we get, not just as hunters, but as men. Thanks for tuning in. If this episode hit home for you, I'd love it if you'd share it with another hunter who needs to hear it. And if you want next level content, exclusive gear, and real support from me and other serious hunters, consider checking out Team Backbone at backboneunlimited.com and our membership tab. Until next time, train harder, hunt smarter, avoid these 5 mistakes, and never settle.